Okay, this is just the closing call and Q&A. Thank you for everyone for coming to all the live talks. That's very nice to have a lot of you here for the calls. So, before I get in, the closing call is just going to be what exactly are in the um like the cards, because again, there's the grammar pages that could go with the command card, or they could be separate, and then the layout card is what I use for the presentations or the for the kids to lay out the actual work. So let's get started with these are the layout cards, a few examples. I've been showing them all throughout the talk. For nouns, I call them random nouns, but they are just noun cards because I actually made these cards a few years ago and just added as I went and I would write on them. So the random nouns are just, I know pies in there, just different things like that. And then you get all the plural nouns, the collective nouns, abstract nouns, and then blank cards to write on. You could either not, for the nouns, you could not laminate it and write with like a white um, colored pencil, or if you laminate it, I know like randomly orange and green work well on it is what the students use most of the time. The articles, there's a bunch of a and in the articles and then blank cards. Obviously, you won't need much more than a and the cards. And then we have the adjective cards, and you saw when we used the possessive adjectives for the second and third years in the other calls. There's also color words and then random adjectives and the blank cards. For the verbs, there's all the tenses, infinitive, present tense, past tense, future tense, all these ones for the verbs, random verbs, and again, blank cards. You can laminate and use a marker to write them down. For adverbs, there's the no card, the question words, which are also pronouns and conjunctions, and then random adverbs, adverbs of time, and then conjunctive adverbs for those third years when we saw them on there. And then the prepositions, there were random prepositions and blank prepositions. The pronouns, they have all the pronouns, subject, object, possessive, reflexive, demonstrative, and then blank. The conjunctions, fanboy, and the coordinating conjunctions, which will be used for the first, second, and then third years. And then the subordinating qualitative, and then just blank ones are used for the third years. Interjection, just random interjections, and the blank ones. And now what you've all been waiting for, it should be question time. After I say, don't forget about the command cards and pages that come with it. So questions. How do students how do students not get confused when some words have multiple symbols? So that's more again when you think about the symbolizing cards and why I made my own symbolizing cards is so that one, the students can see the pattern, but two, I know all the words and what to put on there because when you go to a book and get a random sentence or a random quote, you will often find that words have more than one symbol. And so a way you can deal with this is using a dictionary and going through each definition. Now, this is more, I feel like, of an upper elementary thing, maybe a third grade thing, because in third grade I like to do dictionary research. But you just have to explain to them sometimes things are two different things. It's hard because well, even with that, I was thinking of the word box. That's a noun, or you could say I'm boxing up things, and then that turns into a verb. So multiple symbols have multiple things. It's just looking at the definitions and saying it could be more than one thing, but it's mostly used as this. And we're not introducing many things that have more than one symbol. The next question, what do you do with the follow-up activity after a lesson? For example, one student was working on math. I interrupt him to let him know he's going to receive a lesson in the language room. He receives a lesson and I present the follow-up activity. How do you expect them to do the follow-up activity in that moment? Or do you give them a due date for them to give you the follow-up activity? So I've done it two different ways. The first way was when I wrote on my work plan, like the presentations I was giving to at the beginning it was mostly grade level, and that's why I don't do it that much anymore. But a great way to start is to do grade level groups, and then they might not do it right away, which then would lead to doing it a different day. Now, I would like to have it done by Friday, and so I wouldn't give many presentations past Wednesday. On Thursday, there were a few, but it would be like a math, language, and cultural on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then on Thursday, there'd be a few, but Friday would have none. And any work they didn't finish in that day, they would have to go back and do on Friday. Um, and in that case, that was fine, but what I like to do more now and what I kind of got away from is writing that is using the blank work plan. So not only can the students pick more of their own work and they don't necessarily need a presentation for every single work now, what I do is the students, especially with my scope and sequence and map, they say, okay, I'm ready for a math, or what should I do for math? They're asking me, and I say, okay, well, let's do your next math presentation, or let's do this. So usually how I do it now, especially with individualized lessons, they usually are ready to do the math, so they will do it right after. I know some people give it like, okay, if you got this presentation on Wednesday, it's for the next Wednesday. I don't know how people keep track of that, except maybe if it's in like Transparent Classroom or a similar thing, but usually, and then on my scope and sequence in the circle, it says presented and then practiced. Um, so if it's presented to them, like let's say we're giving that verb whole level group and they didn't do the follow-up activity, then they wouldn't get the practice checked, but they had the presentation. And usually when it's this is also a sidetrack why I don't like pulling kids anymore for presentations. And I did that a lot of ways for years. And I know we learned that in training. Or even I'm even changing up how I'm doing cultural, so it's not like a whole group thing kind of this year. But back to the point is that I will give the presentation to the student when they need it, so they would do that work. Now I know that doesn't work for everybody. That's just how I find I have been doing it recently. So you could do it multiple different ways. And I said this earlier, but as we know, there's multiple different ways to do almost everything in Montessori. So I hope that gives you some clarity. It doesn't have to be done in the moment. It could be done that day. I don't expect students to finish it in the day, but since I use blank work plans and they want to like finish their work plan, they can write in that they worked on it, even if it's not complete. But I wouldn't write a presentation on there because I have my scope and sequence map for them. So I know it was presented, and then I also put it in Transparent Classroom. So there's two ways to keep track of it. We talked about this a little bit off the recording after one of the live calls about what about reluctant writers? So, or the kids that can't read or write yet for specifically grammar. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this. I like to go through before I even start my language map with certain students, I'll do like the pre-reading map, which goes over the vowels and the consonant blends and the vowel blends and things like that. But I will still show them the initial presentation, like the farm, because you don't really need to write for that. It's just putting symbols. The I guess it's just more objects or actions because then verbs, it's all actions. For the article, it's easier to do because it's a, and the, and hopefully they know how to read those by first grade, especially at the beginning. But I know sometimes that's just not what's happening. But for the writers, if they don't want to do the work or write with the pencil, that's a lot of kids, but they just have to do it, or they can move around the cards. I'm pretty lenient. It's like, okay, well, if you laid out the cards and did some of the work, okay. But this year, I'm going to try to be more, okay, here is the whole, um, like explain to me if you know this or not, so I can check to see that they know it. Well, and we also said that older kids can help the younger kids, of course, or just doing activities where they don't need to write so they can get into it. just too many years of partial to try to force kids, not force kids, but like try to really get like you can't do this, you have to do this until you move on. Sometimes it's easier just to say, here's a choice, or you can do a different thing for right now and come back to it type of thing. And then someone asked how my scope and sequence works. So I use my blank work plan, and then I have so many different math, language, and cultural maps. If you want to go back 2 years ago, I did a similar one to this. It's all about the scope and sequence of math, language, and cultural, and it goes through everything very well. So you can watch that. Those are from 2024. This is from 2026 if you're watching it in the future. So that's very good. And so this is a separate thing from the grammar cards. So really my biggest things are the scope and sequence and maps and the grammar cards. And then how are any ideas of how to make the noun family different for each grade? So what comes in the thing is you make the noun family with the papers. Then you do noun family like writing what's in your bedroom. And then the third graders write a story with the noun family. But you could even take it further and do like open a book and say, find all the noun families you could find on this page, especially for third graders. That would be fun. I'm trying to this year get away. I know I just said, oh, here's a bunch of layout cards and command cards. I want to see instead of all these layout cards and command cards, kids using their knowledge of what they've learned in practical senses and real life senses, and that I can actually see that they've learned it and not just done their work for a check mark. And then, oops, um, I think that was, did I get all of them? I think that was the last question, but thank you so much for listening and coming and attending all the chats. I will stop the recording now.